The stars looked different from Luna Station. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly in the darkness. Blue and white swirls covered the home world of humanity. Today was supposed to be the most important day in human history. Today, Earth would join the galaxy. President Helen Carter walked through the station's main hall. Her security team followed close behind. She wore a simple blue dress, not the fancy robes that other world leaders preferred. Helen always said she was just a regular person doing an important job. The people of Earth had chosen her to represent them among the stars. The main hall buzzed with activity. Alien beings from 7 different worlds had come to Luna Station for this moment. The crystalline Zephyrians sparkled like living diamonds. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. The aquatic Delians moved in special water suits that let them breathe. Bubbles floated around their fish-like faces. The insect-like Vex moved in perfect formation. Their 6 legs clicked on the metal floor as they walked. The Lumina were the strangest of all. They looked like walking light, bright and warm, but somehow solid. The reptilian Sauroch hissed softly when they spoke. Their scales changed color with their emotions. The plant-like Verdani swayed gently as they moved. Leaves and flowers grew from their bodies. The Nexus representatives were robots, but they moved like living things. Their metal faces could somehow show emotions. Captain Morrison had studied all these species for months. Earth's first contact with aliens had happened 5 years ago. Since then, humans had learned to communicate with dozens of different worlds. But joining the Galactic Coalition was different. It meant Earth was ready to be part of something bigger. Admiral Lisa Kane stood near the main door. She commanded Earth's space fleet. Her ships protected human colonies throughout the solar system. Today, she wore her best uniform. The silver. Stars on her shoulders caught the light. Dr. Alex Turner checked his tablet one more time. He had written most of the treaty that Earth would sign today. The document was hundreds of pages long, but it said something simple. Humans promised to follow galactic law. In return, they could trade with other worlds and explore new parts of space. The ceremony began at exactly noon, Earth time. President Carter walked to the center of the room. A special table held the treaty documents. Each alien species had brought a gift to mark the occasion. The Zephyrians offered a crystal that could store information for 1,000 years. The Delians brought water from their homeworld's sacred ocean. Helen picked up the signing pen. It was made from metal taken from Earth's first spacecraft to reach another star. She smiled as she signed her name on the treaty. The aliens applauded in their different ways. The Vex clicked their legs together. The Lumina grew brighter. The Sauroch made a deep rumbling sound. Captain Morrison felt proud as he watched. Humanity had come so far in just a few hundred years, from caves to cities to spaceships to the stars themselves. Now they would learn from civilizations that had existed for millions of years. But something felt wrong. Morrison's military training made him notice small details. The Zephyrian delegation had been asking too many questions about Earth's defenses. One of the Delians had been seen in restricted areas of the station. A Vex worker had tried to access the main computer system. Morrison spoke quietly into his radio. "Security team, I need you to check the alien quarters. Something doesn't feel right." Before anyone could respond, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later. Red lights flashed throughout the station. In the dim red glow, shapes moved that shouldn't have been there. The alien delegates were changing. Their bodies shifted and stretched. The Zephyrian crystals turned black. The Delian water suits cracked open, revealing something that was not a fish-like being. These were not the real alien delegates. They were something else. Something that could look like anyone or anything. The first shot came from where the Verdani delegation had been standing. A beam of pure energy hit President Carter in the chest. She fell without making a sound. Her security team tried to reach her, but more energy beams filled the air. Admiral Kane drew her weapon and started shooting. Her shots hit the fake aliens, but their bodies just absorbed the bullets. They were not made of normal matter. Captain Morrison grabbed Dr. Turner and pulled him toward the exit. "We have to evacuate the station," Morrison shouted over the sound of weapons fire. More shapes appeared throughout the hall. They moved like liquid shadow, flowing from one form to another. Some looked human. Others looked like the real alien, delegates. A few took shapes that hurt to look at as if they came from nightmares. Dr. Turner tried to use his communication device. "This is Luna Station calling all ships. We are under attack. The treaty ceremony has been compromised." One of the shadow beings heard him speaking. It flowed across the room faster than a man could run. Turner raised his hands to protect himself, but the creature's touch was like ice and fire at the same time. He screamed once and then fell silent. Admiral Kane fought her way to the main exit. Her officers followed, but half of them were already down. The shadow beings seemed to know exactly where each human would be. They knew the layout of the station. They knew the security codes. They had planned this attack perfectly. Morrison reached the evacuation pods with a handful of survivors. Communications Director Beth Stevens was bleeding from a cut on her arm. Intelligence Chief Rick Mason carried an unconscious technician. They all looked shocked and afraid. "How did they get past our security?" Beth asked. "They didn't," Morrison replied. "They were already here. Those weren't the real alien delegates. The last thing they saw before the pod launched was a message appearing on all the screens throughout Luna Station. The words were in perfect English, as if the attackers knew exactly how to hurt humanity the most. Humanity's expansion ends here. Consider this your only warning. The evacuation pod carried them away from Luna Station as explosions lit up the darkness behind them. President Carter was dead. Admiral Kane was dead. Dr. Turner was dead. Earth's greatest day had become its darkest hour, but Captain Morrison was still alive, and he would remember everything. Earth had never seen so many people cry at the same time. Every television screen, every computer, every phone showed the same terrible news. President Helen Carter was dead. Admiral Lisa Kane was dead. Dr. Alex Turner was dead. The dream of joining the galaxy had become a nightmare. Vice President Dan Cooper stood in the White House Situation Room. His hands shook as he read the reports from Luna Station. 57 people were dead. The alien delegates who had come to sign the treaty were gone. In their place, the attackers had left only shadows and death. How do we tell the world that our leaders were murdered by shape-shifting monsters? Cooper asked the room. General Patricia Hayes had been promoted to head of Earth Defense Command just hours ago. The job should have gone to Admiral Kane, but Kane was floating in space around Luna Station with a hole burned through her chest. Hayes had been a tank commander before she learned to fight in space. She knew how to hit back when someone hit first. "We tell them the truth," Hayes said. "We tell them that someone wanted to stop humanity from reaching the stars. We tell them that someone made a big mistake." Captain Jake Morrison sat at a conference table covered with photographs and computer files. Detective Ray Collins from Earth Central Intelligence had been working with him for 3 days without sleeping. They were trying to understand how the attack had happened. "Look at this," Collins said, pointing to a security recording. The fake alien delegates knew exactly where to stand. They knew which doors would be locked. They knew when the guards would change shifts. Someone gave them detailed information about Luna Station. Morrison studied the recording. The shape-shifting attackers had moved through the station like they owned it. They had weapons hidden in places that should have been searched. They had escape routes planned through parts of the station that were supposed to be secret. "It's not just that they had inside information," Morrison said. "They had perfect information. They knew things that only a few people should have known." The investigation was making Morrison angry. Earth's best security experts had spent months preparing for the treaty ceremony. They had checked everything twice. They had planned for every possible threat, but they had not planned for their guests to be monsters in disguise. Reports were coming in from human colonies throughout the solar system. Strange attacks were happening everywhere. A mining ship near Jupiter had disappeared without sending a distress call. A research station on Mars had gone silent during a routine check-in. Transport ships carrying supplies to the outer colonies were being attacked by unknown vessels. At first, the attack seemed random. Pirates sometimes raided supply ships. Equipment failed on remote stations. Space was dangerous even without monsters hiding in the shadows, but Morrison could see a pattern that others missed. "They're not just attacking us," he told General Hayes. "They're attacking our ability to expand. Every target has been something that helps humans explore space or build new colonies." Hayes studied the star charts on the wall. Red marks showed where attacks had happened. Green marks showed human settlements and important facilities. The red marks formed a circle around Earth's outer colonies, like someone was drawing a line and saying humans could not pass. "They want to keep us trapped in our own solar system," Hayes said. "The assassination wasn't just about killing our leaders. It was about scaring us into staying home." The funeral for President Carter was held in Washington, but every city on Earth held memorial services at the same time. People gathered in parks and town squares to remember their fallen leader. Many of them were angry. Many of them wanted revenge. Cooper had become president, but he felt the weight of the job crushing down on him. Carter had been the one who believed in peaceful contact with alien civilizations. She had trusted that humans could find their place among the stars through diplomacy and cooperation. Now she was dead, and Earth was under attack by enemies who could look like anyone. "The people want to know what we're going to do," Cooper told his advisors. "They want to know if we're going to fight back or hide behind our defenses." General Hayes had an answer ready. "We're going to hunt down every one of these shadow creatures. We're going to find their leaders. We're going to make them pay for what they did." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A small mining colony in the asteroid belt had been attacked 3 days ago. Everyone thought all the miners were dead, but Tony Walsh had survived by hiding in an escape pod. He had floated in space for 2 days before a rescue ship found him. Walsh was brought to Earth Defense Command headquarters as soon as he was strong enough to talk. Morrison and Collins interviewed him in a secure room. Walsh was a tough man who had spent 20 years working in space, but his hands still shook when he talked about the attack. "They came out of nowhere," Walsh said. "One minute we were loading ore into the transport ships. The next minute there were monsters everywhere. But they weren't all the same kind of monster." Morrison leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Some of them looked like those crystal aliens from the news. Some looked like the fish people. Some looked like giant bugs. But they were working together like they were all part of the same army." Collins made notes on his tablet. "Did you hear them? Talking to each other?" "Yeah, that's the weird part. They spoke different languages, but they understood each other perfectly. Like they had been planning this attack together for a long time." The information from Walsh changed everything. The shadow creatures were not just one species of shapeshifters. They were a coalition of different alien groups working together. They had been planning attacks on humanity for months, maybe years. Morrison felt a cold anger growing in his chest. Earth had tried to join the galaxy in peace. Humans had followed every rule and protocol. They had approached other civilizations with respect and hope. In return, they had been betrayed and murdered. "How many more colonies are going to be attacked?" Morrison asked General Hayes. "None," Hayes replied, "because we're not going to wait for them to come to us. We're going to take the fight to them." President Cooper appeared on television that night to address the people of Earth. He stood behind the same podium where Carter had announced humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. But his message was very different. "My fellow humans," Cooper said, "we reached out to the stars in friendship. We offered our hands in peace. In return, our friends were murdered and our colonies attacked. Today that ends. Today we show the galaxy what happens when someone attacks Earth's children." The camera showed Cooper's face as he spoke his final words. His expression was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "We tried to join you as neighbors. Now you will know us as we truly are. Now you will face humanity's answer to those who spill innocent blood." Captain Morrison watched the speech from the bridge of his new ship. Earth's most advanced warship had been renamed in honor of the fallen. The ESS Vengeance was ready for war. The ESS Vengeance cut through space like a knife through black water. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars ahead. Behind him, 3 more warships followed in perfect formation. The ESS Ghost and ESS Phantom were stealth, carriers that could disappear from enemy sensors. The ESS Retribution was a battlecruiser, armed with humanity's newest weapons. Admiral Greg Palmer commanded the fleet from his flagship. He had been President Carter's military advisor before the assassination. Now he led Operation Righteous Fury, humanity's first war beyond the solar system. Palmer was 60 years old and had fought in every major conflict of the past 30 years. But he had never hunted shape-shifting aliens before. Target system coming into range, reported communications specialist Pam Foster. She was young and nervous, but her voice stayed steady. This was her first combat mission. The Vega system had 11 planets and thousands of asteroids. Intelligence reports suggested that the shadow creatures had built a base somewhere in the asteroid belt. Morrison's job was to find it and destroy it. Chief Engineer Carla Diaz worked in the engine room, making sure the ship's experimental weapons were ready. The new plasma cannons could melt through any known armor. The gravity bombs could crush enemy ships like tin cans, but no one knew if human weapons would work against creatures that could change their shape. All ships, this is Admiral Palmer, came the voice over the communication system. Remember, these enemies killed our leaders and attacked our colonies. They think humans are weak because we tried to make peace. Today, we show them how wrong they are. Weapons Officer Ken Wright checked his targeting systems one more time. He had practiced these procedures hundreds of times in simulation, but simulations did not shoot back with alien weapons. The first sign of the enemy came from the ESS Ghost. The stealth ship had been scouting ahead of the main fleet. Captain Linda Cruz reported strange energy readings from a large asteroid near the edge of the belt. "It looks like a normal rock," Cruz said over the radio. "But it's giving off heat signatures consistent with a hidden base. The camouflage is very good." Morrison ordered his ship to move closer. The asteroid looked ordinary from the outside, gray rock covered in craters from millions of years of impacts, but Morrison's sensors detected metal structures hidden beneath the surface. "That's it," Morrison said. "That's where they're hiding." The attack began at exactly 1400 hours ship time. The ESS Retribution opened fire with its main guns. Streams of plasma hit the asteroid and melted away the outer rock layer. Underneath, a metal fortress was exposed to space. The fortress shot back immediately. Energy beams that looked like liquid lightning struck the human ships. The ESS Vengeance shook as enemy fire hit its armor. Sparks flew from control panels on the bridge. "Damage report," Morrison called out. "Forward shields down to 60%, Diaz reported from engineering. But the armor is holding." The battle was different from anything the human crews had trained for. The enemy weapons moved like living things, bending around the ship's defenses. Enemy fighters launched from hidden bays in the asteroid. The fighter craft looked like metal insects with wings that glowed with their own light. Wright targeted the enemy fighters with the ship's point defense guns. Human weapons fired in straight lines, but the alien fighters moved like they were swimming through space instead of flying. Many of Wright's shots missed their targets. "These things don't fly like normal ships," Wright said. "They move like they're alive." Morrison realized that human tactics would not work against an enemy this different. Standard military procedures assumed that enemies would behave in predictable ways, but shape-shifting creatures that could look like anything might think in ways humans could not understand. "All ships, break formation," Morrison ordered. "Use independent targeting. Don't try to predict where they're going. Just shoot where they are right now." The change in tactics helped. Human gunners started hitting more targets when they stopped trying to lead their shots. The alien fighters were fast, but they were not invincible. The ESS Phantom launched its own fighters to protect the larger ships. Human pilots had trained for this moment their whole careers. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez led the fighter squadron into the middle of the alien swarm. Her small ship danced between enemy fire as she lined up her shots. "These things are tough," Martinez reported. "My missiles aren't doing much damage." "Aim for the glowing parts," Morrison suggested. "Those might be their weak spots." The advice worked. When human fighters targeted the glowing wings of the enemy craft, the aliens started falling. But for every enemy fighter destroyed, 2 more seemed to launch from the hidden fortress. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human ships hammered the alien fortress with everything they had. The asteroid started breaking apart under the constant bombardment. Chunks of rock and metal floated away into space. Finally, the enemy fire stopped. The fortress went dark. Morrison ordered his ships to move in and investigate. What they found inside the broken asteroid surprised everyone. The fortress was empty. No alien bodies, no prisoners, no important equipment, just empty corridors and abandoned rooms. "It's a decoy," Admiral Palmer said over the radio. "They wanted us to find this place." Morrison studied the wreckage with growing anger. The shadow creatures had made humans waste time and ammunition attacking an empty base. While the fleet fought fake enemies, the real attackers were probably hitting human colonies somewhere else. Communications specialist Foster received an urgent message from Earth. 3 human settlements had been attacked while the fleet was fighting at Vega. The mining colony on Titan was gone. The research station at Europa had been destroyed. The transport hub at Ceres was burning. "They played us," Morrison said. "They knew we would come here. They knew we would waste our time fighting shadows while they hit our real targets." Dr. Nina Rodriguez, the fleet science officer, examined pieces of the destroyed fortress. She found something that made her call Morrison to the laboratory immediately. "Captain, you need to see this," Rodriguez said. She held up a metal fragment that glowed with its own light. "This technology is not from any known species in the galaxy. The metal is millions of years old, but the energy patterns are completely new." Morrison looked at the fragment. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "What does that mean?" "It means our enemies have access to ancient technology," Rodriguez explained. "Technology from a civilization that died out long before humans or any current galactic species evolved. Someone has been studying these ruins and learning to use weapons that are older than recorded history." The implications were terrifying. Humanity was not just fighting a coalition of alien extremists. They were fighting enemies who had weapons and knowledge from the dawn of galactic civilization. Admiral Palmer called all ship captains to a conference. His face on the communication screen looked tired and worried. "We're dealing with something bigger than we thought," Palmer said. "These attacks are not random. They're part of a plan that's been in motion for a very long time. The enemy knows our capabilities, our locations, and our weaknesses. They're always one step ahead of us." Morrison felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Earth was depending on this fleet to find and stop the shadow creatures. But every victory turned out to be a trap. Every clue led to more questions. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Morrison asked. Palmer was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard as steel. "We keep hunting. We follow every lead. We investigate every rumor. And we don't stop until we find their real base and make them pay for what they did." The hunt was just beginning. The Kepler Nebula was a place where stars went to die. Clouds of gas and radiation twisted through space in colors that hurt to look at. Most ships avoided the area because the radiation could kill crews and destroy electronics. But Captain Jake Morrison was following a trail that led straight into the heart of the deadly nebula. "Sensors are having trouble penetrating the gas clouds," reported communications specialist Pam Foster. "Whatever is in there, it's well hidden." The ESS Vengeance moved slowly through the swirling clouds. Chief Engineer Carla Diaz had installed extra shielding to protect the crew from radiation. The ship's hull glowed faintly from the energy bombardment. Outside, Morrison studied the sensor readings. 3 weeks of investigation had led the fleet to this place. Every captured enemy fighter had contained navigation data pointing toward the Kepler Nebula. Every prisoner they had taken mentioned a place called the Nexus of Shadows. "There," Weapons Officer Ken Wright said suddenly. "Dead ahead, something big." Through the gas clouds, a structure emerged that was larger than any space station Morrison had ever seen. It looked like a city floating in space with towers and domes connected by bridges that sparkled with their own light. At the center stood something that looked like an ancient space station, but it was covered with newer additions that glowed with alien technology. "My God," Foster whispered. "How long has that been out here?" Dr. Nina Rodriguez worked frantically at her science station. "The central structure is definitely ancient, maybe 10 million years old. But the outer sections are new. Someone has been building on top of the ruins for decades." Morrison realized they had found the enemy's main base. The Nexus of Shadows was not just a hidden fortress. It was a combination of ancient ruins and modern construction, hidden in a place where no normal ship would dare to travel. "Send a message to Admiral Palmer," Morrison ordered. "Tell him we found it." But before Foster could send the message, enemy ships started emerging from the nebula around them. These were not the small fighters they had battled before. These were warships as large as human battlecruisers, but they moved with the fluid grace of living creatures. "All hands to battle stations," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. The enemy ships did not attack immediately. Instead, they formed a circle around the ESS Vengeance. Morrison could see other human ships in the distance, surrounded by their own groups of enemy vessels. The entire fleet had been caught in a trap. A voice spoke over the communication system. It sounded human, but there was something wrong with it. The words were too perfect, like someone was reading from a script. "Human ships, you have entered sacred space. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Morrison keyed his radio to respond. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are here to seek justice for the murder of our leaders and the attacks on our colonies." "Justice," the voice repeated. "An interesting word from a species that has existed for such a short time. You speak of justice as if you understand the consequences of your actions." The voice changed, becoming deeper and more alien. "I am Commander Zektar of the Harbinger Remnant. We are the last survivors of the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever known. We have watched younger species rise and fall for millions of years. We have seen the pattern repeat over and over." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Harbingers were supposed to be extinct. Every galactic civilization knew the stories of the ancient empire that had once ruled the stars before mysteriously vanishing. "You're supposed to be dead," Morrison said. "Death is a concept for lesser beings," Zektar replied. "We transcended such limitations long ago, but we learned the hard way what happens when young races expand too quickly. We nearly destroyed the galaxy with our ambition. We will not allow humanity to repeat our mistakes." The enemy ships moved closer. Morrison could see their hulls were covered with the same ancient metal that Dr. Rodriguez had found in the wreckage at Vega. But the ships also had modern weapons and shields that looked like they had been stolen from many different civilizations. "The assassination was just the beginning," Zektar continued. "We tried to warn your species gently. We hoped you would understand that some paths lead only to destruction, but humans are too stubborn to listen to wisdom." Morrison's anger flared. "You murdered innocent people. You attacked our colonies. You call that gentle? We call it necessary. Your President Carter spoke of reaching for the stars as neighbors, not conquerors, but we have studied human history. We know what you really are. You are a warrior species that consumes everything in its path. Left unchecked, you will bring war and chaos to every corner of the galaxy." Dr. Rodriguez was working frantically at her station, trying to gather information about the enemy ships. "Captain," she whispered urgently, "I'm detecting human life signs inside the main fortress, hundreds of them." Morrison realized the implications immediately. "The missing colonists. You've been taking prisoners." "We have been studying you," Zektar admitted. "Your Dr. Turner has been particularly helpful in explaining human psychology and military tactics. His research has allowed us to predict your every move." The news hit Morrison like a physical blow. Dr. Alex Turner was supposed to be dead. They had seen him killed during the assassination at Luna Station, but if he was alive and being forced to help the enemy, it explained how the Harbingers always seemed to know what humans would do next. "Turner is alive?" Morrison asked. "He is useful," Zektar replied, "as are the other humans we have collected. They provide valuable insight into your species' weaknesses. Your emotional attachments make you predictable. Your loyalty to each other makes you vulnerable." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to fight his way out of the trap, he would try to rescue the prisoners. But first he needed to get closer to the main fortress. "I want to see Turner," Morrison said. "I want proof that our people are alive." "That can be arranged," Zektar said. But you will come alone and unarmed. Any attempt at treachery will result in the immediate execution of all prisoners. Morrison knew it was probably a trap, but he could not abandon his people. He ordered his crew to prepare a shuttle while he got ready for what might be a suicide mission. Chief Engineer Diaz pulled him aside before he left. Captain, this is crazy. They're going to capture or kill you. Maybe, Morrison admitted. But if Turner is alive, he might have learned something that can help us fight back. And if there's a chance to rescue our people, I have to take it. As Morrison's shuttle flew toward the nexus of shadows, he could see the true scale of the enemy. Fortress. The ancient central structure was covered with symbols and writings from the dawn of galactic civilization. The newer sections were built from technology stolen from dozens of different species. The Harbingers had not just survived the fall of their empire, they had been planning their return for millions of years, gathering allies from among the extremist factions of younger civilizations. The Shadow Syndicate was not just a terrorist group. It was the advance force of an ancient enemy that wanted to prevent any species from reaching the level of power that the Harbingers had once possessed. Morrison's shuttle docked with the fortress. As he stepped through the airlock, he knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. Either he would find a way to rescue the prisoners and discover the enemy's weakness, or Earth would lose its best hope of victory. The corridor ahead was dark and filled with whispers in languages that predated human civilization. Morrison walked forward into the heart of enemy territory, carrying humanity's hopes with him. The corridors inside the Nexus of Shadows felt like walking through a tomb. Ancient walls covered with alien symbols stretched in all directions. Captain Jake Morrison followed his escort, a creature that looked like a tall human but moved too smoothly to be real. The fake human's eyes glowed with a pale blue light. Dr. Turner is being held in the research section, the creature said in a voice that sounded like several people talking at once. Commander Zektar wishes you to see how useful your friend has become. Morrison tried to memorize the route as they walked. Every turn, every door, every security checkpoint. If he was going to rescue the prisoners, he needed to know how to get out of this maze. They entered a large room filled with computer screens and laboratory equipment. Dr. Alex Turner sat at a desk, typing on a keyboard. He looked older and thinner than Morrison remembered. When Turner saw Morrison, his eyes filled with tears. Jake, Turner said quietly. They told me everyone from Luna Station was dead. Most of us are, Morrison replied. But some of us survived, and we came looking for you. Commander Zektar materialized from the shadows like smoke becoming solid. The ancient Harbinger looked like a tall human covered in crystal armor, but his face was wrong. Too many angles, too many teeth, eyes that held the weight of millions of years. Dr. Turner has been very helpful, Zektar said. His knowledge of human psychology allowed us to predict your military responses. His research on galactic civilizations helped us recruit allies from among the extremist factions. He is the reason we have stayed ahead of your pathetic attempts at revenge. Turner looked ashamed. They threatened to kill the other prisoners if I didn't cooperate. There are families. Here, Jake. Children from the outer colonies. Morrison felt anger burning in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. What do you want from humanity? Why not just leave us alone? Zektar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Because we have seen this story before. Young races that expand too quickly always become destroyers. Your species shows all the signs. Aggressive territorial expansion, rapid technological advancement, inability to accept limits. You will become a plague upon the galaxy if you are not stopped. So you decided to stop us by murdering our leaders? We decided to save the galaxy by containing your species, Zektar corrected. The assassination was meant to frighten you into staying in your home system, but you responded with violence, proving our point. Now we must take more direct action. Zektar gestured to a massive screen on the wall. It showed a weapon that looked like a metal flower with petals made of pure energy. This is the stellar destabilizer. It can cause any star to collapse into a black hole. We have aimed it at your sun. In 6 hours, Earth will be destroyed along with everything in your solar system. Morrison stared at the weapon in horror. You're talking about genocide, billions of innocent people. We prefer to think of it as prevention, Zektar said calmly. Better that one species dies than the entire galaxy suffers from their expansion. But Turner had been listening carefully. While Zektar talked, Turner had been working on something at his computer terminal. He caught Morrison's eye and mouthed a single word: frequency. Morrison understood immediately. Turner had found a weakness in the ancient technology. During his months of forced research, he had discovered that the Harbinger weapons required specific harmonic frequencies to operate, frequencies that could be disrupted. You're making a mistake, Morrison said to Zektar. Humans are not the same as your ancient empire. We learn from our mistakes. We grow. We become better. All young species believe they are special, Zektar replied. All of them think they can avoid the fate of those who came before. But patterns repeat across the millennia. Ambition leads to expansion. Expansion leads to conflict. Conflict leads to destruction. While Zektar spoke, Turner was uploading information to Morrison's personal communicator. The data included the frequency disruption codes and the location of all human prisoners in the fortress. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the fortress. The lights flickered from white to red. Zektar's crystal armor began glowing brighter. Your fleet is attacking, Zektar snarled. Foolish. Their weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. But Morrison smiled. The attack was not meant to break through the defenses. It was meant to provide a distraction while Commander Maria Santos led a covert team into the fortress through the maintenance tunnels. Morrison had sent the signal before entering the enemy base. The first explosions came from the lower levels. Santos and her team were moving fast, using the confusion to reach the prisoner-holding areas. Morrison could hear weapons fire getting closer. Your rescue attempt will fail, Zektar said. Even if you escape, the stellar destabilizer will still destroy your homeworld. Not if we disrupt its frequency, Morrison said. Zektar's eyes widened. He looked at Turner, who was no longer typing on his computer. Turner had uploaded everything he had learned to Morrison's communicator and then erased his own files. You helped him, Zektar accused. You wanted to use my knowledge to destroy my own species, Turner replied. I may have cooperated to save lives, but I never stopped looking for a way to fight back. The battle inside the fortress became chaos. Santos and her team reached the prisoner areas and began evacuating families and researchers who had been captured during the attacks on human colonies. Meanwhile, Morrison fought his way toward the stellar destabilizer control room. The ancient weapon was enormous, built into the heart of the fortress. Energy flowed through crystal conduits that pulsed with their own heartbeat. Morrison could feel the power radiating from the machine. It was like standing next to a captive star. Morrison activated Turner's frequency disruptor. The sound was barely audible to human ears, but the effect on the Harbinger technology was immediate. Crystal conduits began cracking. Energy flows became unstable. The stellar destabilizer started shutting down. Zektar appeared in the control room, moving faster than any living thing should be able to move. You cannot stop what has already begun, he said. But Morrison had more than just the frequency disruptor. He had something that the ancient Harbingers could not understand or predict. He had human stubbornness, the refusal to give up even when facing impossible odds. Morrison activated the ESS Vengeance's experimental gravity weapons. The ship fired directly into the fortress, targeting the stellar destabilizer. The ancient weapon began collapsing in on itself, its own energy tearing it apart. Zektar screamed in rage and despair. You do not understand what you have done. Without our guidance, your species will destroy everything. Maybe, Morrison said, but that will be our choice to make. Not yours. The fortress began breaking apart. Morrison, Turner, and the rescued prisoners evacuated to the human ships. As they flew away from the collapsing nexus of shadows, Morrison watched the ancient Harbinger base tear itself apart. The war was over, but Morrison knew this was really just the beginning. Humanity had proven they could defend themselves against ancient enemies. Now they had to prove they could explore the galaxy without becoming the monsters that Zektar had feared. 6 months later, Morrison stood on Luna Station. The new station had been built on the site where President Carter died. A memorial garden honored all those who had been killed in the Shadow War. The inscription on the memorial read, "They sought to end our journey to the stars. Instead, they ensured we would reach them as one people, united in purpose and unbreakable in resolve." Morrison touched the memorial stone and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were watching humanity. Some would welcome them as friends. Others might see them as threats. But humanity would face whatever came next together. They had learned that the galaxy was a dangerous place, but they had also learned that they were strong enough to survive it. The stars were calling, and humanity was ready to answer.